Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Hello. All right, so thank you all for coming out tonight. It's so lovely to see such beautiful faces here for such a revolutionary event within our space. We want to first say we are First Church Miami. We've been downtown forever. It seems like about 125 years. And now we're in a situation where we have such rich history, but now we want a fresh start within that new history. And events like this, carry that new legacy that we want to achieve. And so we're First Church Miami. Our senior pastor, unfortunately, today cannot make it. She recently had an operation done, but she's doing fine, but she couldn't make it today, unfortunately. But Pastor Reverend Dr. Audrey Warren. And so that's a little bit of who we are. Today marks the final event of our Black History celebration at First Church Miami with open house. And we wanted to call this event Why Don't You Celebrate With Me? Because we want to bring new opportunities and new ways to celebrate. And we want that celebration to be open amongst the community. And so we asked, why don't you celebrate with me? And seeing you guys here today really makes that focus come to life. And as we celebrate Black History Month, today's conversation, we will talk about the redevelopment of this amazing city and how it impacts all lives, and to bring different thought processes to that realization that we are currently in. We want to thank everyone that was able to make it today. We also want to thank First Church and our staff. We want to thank the members who are a part of the committee to get this done. Yes, thank you. We also want to thank Christopher Mitchell. As you guys saw downstairs, we do have an exhibit going on with beautiful, amazing images from the devastating earthquake in Haiti over 15 years ago, or 15 years ago. So today is the closing of that exhibition, so hopefully you guys were able to see and really experience that moment with us. We've had that exhibition up since January 12th. And every day you walk into the shop, it's a new mesmerizing experience. And it's sad that today is the final day, but our micro gallery will be open to the future, so we can be a house for other promising opportunities within the space. So we want to thank Christopher for his artwork and his dedication and allowing us to be a home for those pieces. We also want to thank Open House Miami for partnering with us to make this event happen. Thank you to Open House and all those sponsors. So we have here the Miami Center for Architecture and Design, the AIA, and the DDA. We are so grateful for your partnership and your sponsorship within Open House Miami, and Open House Miami opening the doors to us. So I'm going to further move this process along and pass the mic over to Pastor Reverend Naya Toussaint. Thank you.
Good evening. I promise I'm not underdressed on purpose, but I said I'm gonna get dressed as if I am home. And so we welcome you home to our house, and you'll hear about why we have a table here on our altar. But as was said, my name is Reverend Naya Toussaint, and I welcome you to our space. Some opening remarks before our esteemed conversationalists join me on the stage. On January 12th of this year, First Church launched its first exhibit within its new micro gallery. The photo exhibition Nusuke Ensemble, We Shake Together, by Christopher Mitchell, has captivated our community and visitors from around the world over the last 6 weeks. The exhibition was installed not only to commemorate Haiti's 2010 earthquake, but also for some spiritual work to be done. First Church partnered with the Haitian Studies Association and Kosomba, the Association for Voodoo Studies, to bring Mitchell's work to life, but also to do spiritual labor over the harm Christianity has caused to the Haitian people. It was the American pastors who proclaimed that Haiti is in a blood pact with Satan, that the earthquake was the result of Haitians being queer or practicing voodoo. The healing and interreligious engagement that has taken place through Mitchell's photographs leave us without question that the Holy Spirit and the Lua have been working in the hearts and minds of all those who encountered our space. My friends, as we sunset Nusuke Asam, we approach tonight, dust and dreams, with the same posture, the same spirituality, and communal power that was imbued on us back in January. As a faith community committed to social justice, tonight's conversation is pivotal to our ministry in downtown Miami, and we realize that we are covered in the Magic City's redevelopment dust. First Church is the city's historic church with a fresh start. Founded the same year as the city, in 2018, this congregation was faced with the decision of either closing its doors or dreaming of a new way to remain downtown. This led to the selling of our air rights to what is now the Elser Hotel and the redevelopment of our 12-story worship space that you all will experience tonight. As a beacon of liberation, creativity, and public intellectualism in the city, most especially through our more than 35 years of ministry to the unhoused, we are cognizant of the city's housing crisis and shifting communities. Tonight, the members of our church are leaning into a conversation about Miami's redevelopment because although we were able to stay on our property, we know many others do not have this privilege. We are also wrestling with how the need for our ministry to the unhoused is steadily increasing as developers raise story after story on block after block. We live and worship in the nuance of Miami's desired and magical dreams, the city's dusty, gentrifying despair. This is specifically true for our church's Black folk. We, the Black folk of this church and the city, are the neighbors who look out for one another. We are this country's great architects by day, yet are not allowed nor privileged enough to own property where we lay our hands at night. We, people of the block, who are forced to migrate across waters, and then are forced to move over the tracks, and then are forced to make room for the interstate, and are now forced to move off the high, dry ground, as Valencia will talk about, I am sure. We, the black bone and flesh, who laugh loud in kitchens, whose families include rich aunties navigating white neighbors who cannot believe they can own a home in Miami shores, and whose families also include young cousins who wait anxiously to defend their right to shelter against Liberty City's slumlords. We, at First Church, come to the kitchen table, holding that Miami's redevelopment is full of both suffocating dust and resourced dreams for Black folks. We understand the ways gentrification pries on under-resourced Black communities with the intention of pushing people out. We hear the elders who encourage us to buy land, whether it's in Texas or Georgia, just do it soon. We also see young adults balancing their finances and desire for adequate housing through leasing and city centers. We are most concerned about the deep crisis of homelessness across the city. While we do not come with answers, nor do we expect for our guests to have those answers, we are very clear about one thing. Everyone deserves more than adequate housing. Here at First Church, abundance is our attitude, and liberation is our motivation. So tonight, we invite Monica Sorelle, Desmond Meade, and Valencia Gunder, whose bios you all can receive from Sandy, into our kitchen space to join us in the nuance. The kitchen table is a juxtaposition to the dining room table. While the dining room is one of formality, power, and servitude, the kitchen table is one where dinner and the diner may also transition to a cook, where conversation is had while laboring and laughing, where pots, swinging doors, and music fill in the silence. In West African culture, the kitchen has also been a place for some to bury their dead. Right under the floor of the heart of the home, families could seek out the spirit of those who go before us. Today, we honor in our kitchen the spirit of those who have died to gentrification, like Aldofina Villanueva of Puerto Rico, Said Vaso of Brooklyn, Alejandro Neto of San Francisco. With all its noise, with all its embracing of conflict, with all of its heat, with all of its required creativity, we invite you to embrace the power of the kitchen with us as we at First Church continue to wrestle with the despair and desire in our community. Beloved, I welcome up Monica, Desmond, and Valencia, three powerful black activists from our city, to talk us through the dust and the dreams. There will be a time for questions, should we have time from Desmond, who has a train to catch. But we hope we'll get some questions from you all, and we welcome you home. My friends, it is so good to be here with you all. We have no questions. We have no prompts. Some of us have just met on a Zoom call this week, and we are in the kitchen. What's up? What's going on? What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, I am not even talking to y'all right now. I'm talking to my kin folks at the table, right?
That's all right.
Sister, I am so moved by your movie, right? For real, it was your documentary. It was. I was touched by it, and I think that it created a lot of questions, right? A lot of questions and a lot of, I think like Naya said, sometimes we just don't have answers, and we're not going to have answers, right? But I think that it's moments like this in this topic that we can have considerations, right? And it's like what's right for one person might not be right for the other. And I know we might disagree on some things tonight or whatever, but I think that what's most important is that we at least present some considerations and have, I guess, the courage to actually consider what's presented. And I'm hoping that whoever's listening to us talk, who's eavesdropping on us, will also do the same thing.
Well, yeah, that's where I am, right? Is this consideration. So Monica, right, you have this movie, and then you put the main character as how I interpret it. Someone who wanted to move, a working class Haitian man with a wife and a son living in Little Haiti. And I just saw in Xavier, right? This is in his character that he had this desire to move. And I had to consider that as I approach conversations a movie, a film about gentrification in Little Haiti, right? Like, huh, if I sell my house, the considerations, I might get this bigger house that I want. And that might give me the dream that I desire. And yet, I'm all in all these conversations about I need to stay here to protect my community.
But I don't know if he just had a desire just to move. I think part of it might have been he felt the squeeze, right? Because remember, he was working on a demolition and revitalizing an area that was far away from his home. And as the movie went on, the demolition got closer and closer and closer, right? And so I think that, what I've seen, especially even in, say, the Biscayne area, between 54th and 75th Street, right? I've seen how through gentrification, folks was actually forced out of there, right? And gentrification was just slowly squeezing out, and we've seen a lot of that, like in over policing. We've seen where property taxes was going up. You've seen where rent was going up, right? And you just seen that, man, it's time for me to move. The other thing that you saw was even right across the street, right across Biscayne, is a very affluent neighborhood. And so it played with us being, I think it played with us being forced out against us seeing good things and desiring to have that, right? But then understanding that maybe I don't have enough or I'm not good enough to get it. And while at the same time, even if I thought I was good enough to get it, when I go try to get it, I am brutally reminded that my kind is not wanted in this area.
I think that's exactly right. I don't think he felt the squeeze, which is why, and you haven't seen the film yet, and it's online. We'll promote it later. But I think that's why he had to have that talk with his wife to sort of bring him back to earth, like look up. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people, especially immigrants, like they put their head down and they work, 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 and they feel like I did all this work. I've been in this country. I've been paying taxes. I did everything right. I should have more. And when they go to get more, they realize either it's too late or, this space, when they went to the open house in the film, it was like, this space is not for you. You're, someone that looks like you is here helping sell the space, but she knows it's not for you either, They already made that decision without you ever being in the room. They made that decision 10 years ago that you are not supposed to have this space.
Down here in Miami, downtown Miami, I used to be, matter of fact, I was homeless in Miami for about 10 years, right? And so these very same streets I used to walk, right? And one of the things that, or indicators that showed me that there was a transformation happening was seeing white women walking dogs down the street. And I'm being real. And in your movie, it started out with the Haitian guy on the phone walking down the street talking. And then later on in the movie, it was what? It was a white lady with a dog, even leaning on my man's property, having a loud conversation, not just oblivious
I
of
just
him.
saw that by Lyric Theater. I was like, oh my God.
Okay. And so that, I think that is kind of like a squeeze that someone else is coming in the community that I cannot compete with, right? Even though I might see what they have and desire, because I think it's natural for anybody to want what's best for their family. I think it's natural to want more space, right? And what used to be okay, that space that used to be okay, is no longer okay because what you're seeing on TV, what you're seeing in the commercials or the advertisement in the newspaper is saying that you should have more, right? But the brutal reality of it is that that more is not for us.
I just want to say, I don't know if it was always okay, because who was it in the A World More Concrete about Overtown, a book, right? He said that one, not only was Overtown a lot of leasing before 1960 with the interstate, a lot of people renting. It was black landlords, right, and white landlords that were benefiting from people not being able to buy property, and they were giving them shanty towns, right? It was just slums. And so I think that's the other thing is, we talk about what we had to move into. Even back then was not adequate housing, I don't think. And I don't think it's now, we see something different and we want more. This has been a long journey of not being given adequate housing. And even now when you're being pushed out, unless you're getting that money and it's enough money to put that down payment on a house that's got a lot of land, you might be going right to. Go ahead.
Right. So, I think about like jumping out of the frying pan right into the fire. And oftentimes people think that, this place is beautiful because it has fresh paint, but the walls are molded underneath. And it's oftentimes that we think, oh, we need to get something better. We need to go somewhere else, and don't get it twisted. My family from Liberty City, and some of them have moved to like West Miramar, right? But my little cousins can't walk down the street without being harmed by the police, or they getting talked to any kind of way in they all white school, or even like my grandmother lives in a house in a gated community paying too much money for it, and it is completely slum. But it's in a gated community with a manicured lawn, and I'm like, your house in Liberty City was better than this. Like my mom in and out of the hospital with lung cancer because of the mold growing in this $500,000 house. So she could have stayed in Liberty City where it was no mold. Yeah, the streets may have not been as clean, but it doesn't mean, like, I think oftentimes people think that new buildings will make a new life for you, and that's just not true.
So wait a
It
minute,
is not
you trying
true.
to tell your grandma that she should have stayed in Liberty City?
I told my grandma that she a fool for paying for where she at, though.
Oh, okay, but not that she should stay in Liberty City,
I
right?
told her she should stay in the house that she had paid off. She worked 30 years.
But what? Well, hold
And
up.
that same house is now on the market for $700,000. She
I understand
absolutely
that.
should have stayed still.
But what if grandma got tired of hearing sirens in the middle of the night, hearing gunshots
Yeah.
in the middle of the night, worried about
Yeah.
Ain't you
And-
the one
kids?
that said,
I mean, but
didn't
But
you say
wait,
this all
wait.
start with policing?
yeah, but
No.
but
wait,
it's
Desmond, I
but
got
it's
you.
a good question.
So at the time, my grandma moved out of Liberty City when I was going off to college, right? That's
Not
a
too
minute-
long ago. 'Cause
22 years ago. See, look, don't
I
do
wasn't
me.
trying to tell you
I
age.
just look young. And don't get it twisted at the time. And when I was 18, I was like, yeah, I'm ready to go too. Like, grandma, let's get out of here. Let's get out of here. And I thought that this would give my younger siblings a better opportunity. It would give my grandmother a better way of life and things like that, you know. And I was thinking about that because, you know, when we look at Liberty City, we were seeing all the negative things. Like, you know, these developers are looking at Liberty. They saw Liberty City 20 years ago, and they saw it was a gold mine because they had the opportunity and the resources to make it that, right? Had my grandmother and her generation had the same resources as a developer, they would have stayed right there in Liberty City because Liberty City would have been a place where they wanted to stay. Now, we're sitting here, right? We're sitting here, and we know that housing in the state of Florida is almost no good. We're usually not up to code. 3, you barely have any renter rights, right? This is anywhere you live in the whole state of Florida, right? Regardless of how good or bad the community is, right? But depending on if your community is getting the proper investment, to your landlord or whoever is your HOA is doing what they're supposed to do, your way of life, your material conditions could still be the same thing, even if you're in this gated community. I lived out in Pembroke Pines when I first was released from my incarceration. And I've been living in, I grew up in Liberty City, and I still live in Liberty City to this day. I bought my house in Liberty City. The only time I was held up to gunpoint and robbed was in Pembroke Pines in a gated community. So I don't want people to think that because you're not in a community like Overtown or Liberty City or Little Haiti, that you are going to be away from the crime or away from the harm or away from not having access to education. Just because you live in a place doesn't mean that you're going to get that, because racism, oppression, class oppression happens everywhere. And until all of those things are fixed, it doesn't matter your zip code at this point, right? Because I can't run from me being incarcerated, like me being formerly incarcerated, right? Like that follows me everywhere I go, regardless of what it is. And the only reason I was able to live in Pembroke Pines because the apartment was in my sister's name, right? Like, let's be clear. Like, I wouldn't have gotten approved at the time for anything in Pembroke Pines. And don't ever get it twisted. Like, I live in Liberty City. I set a standard for myself. Like, my house looks a certain way. I like it to keep it up and all of these things, right? And then I also like my next door neighbor. She's 85. She bought her house when she was 17, right? She's on a fixed income. Of course she wants nice things for her house, but who says she has the money to do those things, right? She didn't grow up in generational wealth. She don't have a trust fund that's sitting there or whatever. She can't just pick up and leave and do all of these things. Like, it's a different thing, and don't get it twisted. Like, I get it. Like, some people like, oh, your great-grandma had this thing. You could have kept it and did a thing. All that sounds good, right? But if I came to this country with little to no money, and I landed in Little Haiti, and I put my head down and worked. And I'm an immigrant, right? Probably not getting paid what I should get paid, right? And then now you have to move to another community. You're gonna face those same things that you faced when you moved into Little Haiti, and that money that you was making to live in Little Haiti ain't gonna stretch not an extra dollar or an extra cent in this better community. We know that, right? Because Publix is way more expensive than Aldi's.
So,
y'all dig what I'm saying?
But it seemed like you asking for a perfect world, and I think in your movie, it wasn't a perfect world. It wasn't a perfect answer, you know. In various relationships, whether it was with his wife talking about moving, whether he was in the interaction between Xavier and his son. I don't think we're not gonna have utopia, and I think that trying to create a utopia will actually set a lot of people up for disappointment and probably diminish their hope. And so I think that part of that is not necessarily around the gentrification piece, but around the empowerment piece, right? About how do we teach our people about how to create generational wealth, right? How do we know how to even balance our books? There's just some basic things that we may not have thought of being important.
Yeah.
And so that I can see that part playing a piece in it. But there is that two sides of every story because
yeah.
you got robbed in Pembroke Pines.
Uh-huh.
I did all my dirt in Liberty City.
That's
right.
right.
And so I didn't go to Pembroke Pines to do it because I would stick out more in Pembroke Pines. But in Liberty City, I was able to operate
and it was 20
in the
years
shadows.
apart too, right?
Oh, wait
and
a minute.
Pembroke
Don't tell
Pines,
my age. Don't
Pembroke
you tell
Pines
my
and
age
Miramar,
like that.
it's actually a very well mixed community. It's not just non-black people living there, especially Miramar, right? It's a lot of
But it's more
Caribbean
open.
folks. Huh?
It's more open. It's not even in Miramar. It is not. You don't get like we had about 3-4 different like housing units. I mean, we had Sable Palms down the street here. We had
my
Poke
only
and
thing is
Beans.
about what you were just saying, though. I'm really tired of this phrase "racial uplift," and that's what it seemed like you were getting at. Of we got to teach each other this, we got to do this, and that we have to uplift the race, and that we should deserve better. We should want better for ourselves than the garbage on the streets in whatever this town. And so that's why I'm moving over here, and that's why your grandmother didn't want the sirens. So I just want to say that I'm a little tired of this racial uplift because I think it's a
You put that race in it. You don't put the race in it.
No, but it's
right?
not black and white. No pun intended. It's not black and white because there's so many things. Like, yeah, we can learn how to invest and we can learn how to do this. We can get a better job. We can move to Broward. But there are things that are decided for us. There are rooms that we are not in that they make those decisions for us. So, like, if we're going to, for example, Little Haiti, there are ways in which they try to push us out. You said over-policing is one of them. There's code enforcement always trying to come at you because your lawn is too whatever. You have a broke-down car. So there's ways in which they are incrementally trying to get you out. And at the end of the day, what's happening is that we are destroying communities. So we're going to these subdivisions. We don't know our neighbors anymore.
I think there's a difference, though. I really do think there's a difference. Now, I don't how you say, don't get it twisted. Don't get me twisted, right? That I am not saying that, man, if only black people would have more financial literacy. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that we're not preparing ourselves with the tools that's necessary to resist the gentrification, right? And because we may not operate at that particular level, gentrification is easier, and it's easier to perpetuate these injustices on us. That's what I'm saying, right?
I think I agree with that, Desmond.
Well, you don't have to.
I think that's fine. We don't. And
contemplate.
I think for me, y'all have to excuse my cough. I'm just getting over the flu, so I don't have nothing that's contagious, y'all. So thank you for the grace. So a few things I think about, right? Right now, in today's time, in 2025, we have more black millionaires and billionaires in America than ever before, right? From 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, right? We also have some of the most educated people, black people, right? Most of us have degrees, even though you could barely get a job with one these days. Because, when my mom was going to school, go to school, go get a degree so you could get a job, work 40 years, and build a better life for yourselves, right? And then I was told that, right? And I graduated and don't use my degree. Actually, I could not find a job with my degree because the world I was going into, which is agriculture, which is very, very interesting because my ancestors had to do free agriculture for a long time. But when I went into agriculture with my degree, I could not find a job. You get what I'm saying? So I talk about, like, yes, we are trying to do the things, but when you are starting at an unfair playing field, it is actually unrealistic to expect us to get the same outcomes and hit the same goals, period, point blank. I remember when y'all president said,
Our president
said that his father gave him a small loan of $2 million to start his thing, right? A small loan of $2 million. Like, that's all he gave me, right? Now, some people would be like, boy, what? But Donald Trump his background, right? He was actually a millionaire by the time he was the age of 2. They got documentaries to talk about this, right? Now, Desmond, if your father came to you and gave you $300, because that's all he had to give, right? You would be like, thank you, Father. This is great, right? But your story and the way you have to grind with your $300 is completely different than somebody who was a millionaire at 2 years old and was given $2
But
million.
don't ignore the fact that when them stimulus checks came, nobody can get in the Gucci store because them lines is around the corner.
Okay.
Right? No, let's keep it 100.
Desmond,
right?
cut
that
it out.
We get a bonus money. Right, and
First of all, the stimulus check
right?
is
so all the black
that's
millionaires
our
and
money
billionaires
anywhere.
she's talking about. None
Nah.
of them is facing gentrification.
Nah,
no one is
until they
facing
cut the
suffering.
check for reparations, don't play with me, no stimulus check.
But
No.
we need reparations. Yeah.
Yeah, don't talk about no stimulus check, because it ain't like just black people got
Okay,
it
so
by
now
themselves now.
So I think that's a question that we should tackle. But don't think just because there are a lot of successful black folks that are educated and got degrees, that don't mean why don't they invest into the communities? That is something that we don't do. Like Donald Trump father invested in him, right? We ought to. This is the whole thing. Like, matter of fact, it's going to seem different, right? But it's online. Like when the pandemic hit, one of the things that a lot of activists across the country was doing was actually asking people, advocating that people who are incarcerated, right, that were at risk, actually get released, like compassionate release. And that was a noble thing to do. But the problem was that when you was asking them to be released, you didn't have a place for them to go, right? And so a lot of folks was actually getting released back into the streets, right? And back into situations that was more conducive to them actually reoffending. And so I'm saying that, yes, we could.
But it's the level of investment I can give, right?
Yeah.
So if my investment is the advocacy to get you out of the prison, maybe that's all I have to give. It's different if I had the access to resources to set this person up more than that. So what I'm saying is, the playing field is different. If I had the money, you remember my brother came home.
Auntie,
chill.
You misunderstood
No,
what
no,
I
no.
said, Auntie.
I understand what you're saying. When my brother came home from prison, right? You know, because I called you, right? Even though I don't have millions of dollars, I had just bought my house, right? I was working a good job, and I was working side by side with Desmond. And before, I was like, my brother's coming home, and I could teach him how to organize, and I'm quite sure he'd be great to join your organization. So my brother was able to come out of prison and go straight into a job next to Desmond Meade, right? That is still a privilege.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying?
That we can provide each other.
But also he still had to move back to Liberty City, right? Yep. He still had to come home with no money. He still had all these things. But still, that was the investment I had to give my brother, right? I had a connection with somebody who I knew he could have a job, and I had a room and a clean house for him to come stay in. That's the level I could invest with him. So what I'm saying is, if people are trying to do a thing, right, and if they invest in what they have, if all I have is 5 cents to give, and I give that 5 cents, you shouldn't look bad at me like you should have gave 100. Like, all I have is the 5 cents, and I could have just not given you my 5 because that could have been my last, right? But I gave it to you anyway. So I want us to think about these different things. I know you do.
I agree with you
But
on
I
that.
want us to think about how nuanced these things are. If I'm an immigrant coming into this world, if I am a woman, right, and I'm getting paid less than a man on the job, but they telling me I should be turning out the same things, that is unfair that you expect us to come out with the same outcomes or even matching the playing field. The fact that I had to wait, I had to get a lawyer to go up against the bank because these people did not want to give me the loan to buy my grandfather's house because Liberty City is such a hot topic, right? And people don't talk about that, the unfair loan system, banking systems, and all of these things. Women have a hard time going to these places. A migrant could never even think about that. In certain cases, you get what I'm saying? Miami is now the second most expensive city in the whole United States of America under LA, right? So you expect somebody who came into this country, right, that their education back at home is not accepted here, right? No matter if they was a doctor or entrepreneur, they come here, you still at ground zero. 2, you get here and you work. And because the unfair banking system, the unfair loans, and all of these things, you can barely do it. And we do have success stories, right? But that's not the status quo. It's not. And I think, like, we do want better communities, right? Don't get it twisted. I've never met a person who wants to live in squalor. Right, I never met a person who wants to live in squalor. So I don't want to, once I get it twisted about us wanting better communities because we want to evolve with what is happening, right? And also, nobody ever said they didn't want new walls, but people want to be able to live in the walls. That was the whole thing around Liberty Square, right? Liberty Square was disgusting. The old Liberty Square was disgusting. It was molded inside. I don't know if y'all ever walked into some of them units before, right? Because the government is the worst landlord you could ever have. Lord have mercy. You know what I'm saying? And those folks was like, we are not against a new property, but they were concerned with the displacement. And that is the problem with gentrification. It's not because people are against having beautiful streets and nice lawns and beautiful trees and all of those things, but why build it if I can't live in it?
But see,
Right?
So,
that's
wait,
not
wait,
okay.
Monica was gonna say you were gonna talk about where we place on it. Who do we?
But yes, yes, because I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I feel like you're not trying to go that way.
Go ahead. Tell me what you
Putting
feel
the
like.
onus on us,
Oh no,
impoverished people,
No.
to pull ourselves
No.
out of it.
No.
But I think it's very interesting what
No.
Valencia's saying. I think
The onus
Portland
is
Meads
not.
is
yeah.
a beautiful example
Yeah.
in that yes, it was filthy, it was nasty, but it was a community, right? And it was a tight knit community. But the buildings needed to go. We do need new housing. So change isn't bad. It's the how that they do it. And that is out of our control because they built those new houses, which are falling
Again.
apart, by the way.
Right.
But I don't think
And
everything is
they-
out of our control. I cannot. I
Did you
cannot.
see- so
I
there's
cannot
this
agree-
beautiful
I cannot agree
film.
with that
This
one.
is another. We should do like a movie club
We
too.
might. do
Yeah.
a movie.
Because there's this great film
Uh-huh.
that Valencia was in called Raising Liberty Square, where they go into it. They go into the meetings that they had with what's the company? Related Group.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
Where they said, this is what we want. We are telling you what we want. We're telling what we need. We're telling you what our concerns are. And they take it and they take notes and they throw it out.
And they
behind them
did that
do
in
whatever they want.
1960 in Overtown. You know,
Yeah,
people
and
thought-
that's the constant thing, right?
Yeah.
Like they, so it's like, okay, we should participate, right? And I, I wasn't around when they raised Scott Carver because I was in college and carrying on. But when I got back here, and I was there since the first time they even came up with the idea when they introduced it in the county about redoing Liberty Square, right? And at the time, I actually led the first canvas to do the survey and to collect the data to hear from the residents. It was me,
Yep, you
Munch,
sure did.
Danny,
Yep.
all of us.
Yep.
And we went out there, we were talking to our community, and we was just like, this thing is happening, or whatever, like, you need to be involved and all this stuff. This is before they even opened up the RFP process, right? We was talking to folks or whatever. Do you understand the one strike rule? Because we learned from Scott Carver. We learned from Brooklyn and Harlem and Oakland and Atlanta, hell, all these places who have went through these things. And folks were active. Folks were active. They would go to the things. The resident council got super organized because they tell you to participate. You got to go to the saloons and go to the meetings and do your
Barbershops.
advocacy, and you got to do help be a part of the community benefits agreement and all of these things, right? The residents, y'all should have seen busting out of the seams of people in that Liberty Square Community Center, like busting out of the seams, continuously speaking, doing all of the stuff. And for them to do all of that, right? And then Aaron took the job. Aaron grew up right around the corner from the Beans, right? Aaron took the job. I remember when he called me, he said, V, they got an opportunity. He went to school for urban planning, and he said, should I take the job? I was like, yeah. I said, we got a good community benefits agreement. The community is involved. And if you get into the thing, we'll have a trifecta to make sure it goes through, right? They promised that they would not displace anybody, right? They would shift people around the thing, and all of this stuff was promised, right? And they also promised that they was not going to intimidate people and retaliate against the residents that were advocating, and they completely lied about all of that. They lied to Aaron, they lied to those community members and everything. So even when we go in there to do the advocacy.
But now here's the question. Okay, in that same community, right? And just know that I think I do need to play a little devil's advocate because,
It's a church.
Yeah.
Ain't no room
Got
for the
no
devil
devils
in
out
here.
Well, hey, well, okay. Y'all got me on. I can't even come back on that one. But no, I think I do need to play that because even in that community, right? What type of repercussions was laid down for these lies, continuous lies? And see, and that is very important because I remember way back when there was a little boy that was, say, kidnapped from Cuba. His name was Ilian, right? And I remember when when Janet Reno was the attorney general, and she ordered that he get sent back to his father. And the government agents ran into their house, snatched him up, and sent him back to Cuba. Everybody that had anything to do with that, to this day, cannot run for office and win. Because the Cuban community, they took notes. And they made sure that every person that has something to do with that faced some type of repercussions.
Carlos
Now,
Jimenez?
now, if I
Xavier Suarez?
if I were to flip that, right, and say about the broken promises that have happened in the African American community, decade after decade after decade, I have not. Maybe it's happened, but I have not seen any politician being made to actually pay the price, right, for the deception, right, that they've perpetrated on our community.
Desmond.
And I'm just saying I have
Marco
not seen that.
Rubio is in the cabinet of the president. All of these people were in power doing that thing with this young
Marco
guy.
Rubio was not a supporter of removing Ilian Gonzalez from.
That's what I'm saying. He
family.
was against it.
Yeah, he was
So
against.
what
No,
I'm
this
saying
was
is,
no,
but they're still in
but,
power.
no. Wait a minute. Hold up.
They're still in
I'm not
power.
talking about the people who were against removing him. I'm not talking about that because they're good.
No.
Because they wanted that boy to stay here. It was those who supported him getting removed that court held. To this day, right? To this day,
Also,
somebody's running for
Desmond,
office.
you
We're
still are
gonna,
not-
but let me finish this because this is
It's
true
not
in
a
our
good
community.
example.
And I'm gonna tell you why it's a good example. Because here's the thing: when a person who had anything with removing this boy run for office, that Cuban community automatically rally, even years
1950
after.
Cubans are different
But
than the
what I know
1980
in the
Cubans.
African American community
be clear.
is that you can totally disrespect the African American community one day, and the very next week be in their black pulpits, right,
And
getting
this is
elected.
the thing. And this is
And
the
so
thing.
that is
Desmond,
the thing
that's
that
not true.
it is.
Let me tell you something. Let's
It
be
is true.
very clear here about the power of the Cuban community in Miami. Okay? I know you don't live down here no more, brother. And I know you work in partnership with brown folks all around the country. But we know we do have a dynamic of super problematic Latinx folks here in Miami, Florida. Let's be clear about it, right?
So y'all can't be using
And
big
also,
words.
they have a certain level of power that other Latinx groups do not have here, and black people do not have here, right? And it shows. To think that stuff happened in Liberty Square or Scott projects and nobody stood toe-to-toe. We tried to run candidates. We tried to do all of the things, but voter suppression. All of these things were happening, displacement. Right? Once you move a person, their voting polls change. All of these things, Desmond, you fight for voting rights all the time. You
I
know
fight
how
for it all the time,
messy
and I know how
that
they
thing can
diminish.
be.
I know how they diminish our voting
and
power.
Also, it was people who was involved with this child being removed that has everything to do with that's in power to this day, right? Xavier Suarez, right? And I don't even dislike Commissioner Suarez, right? Xavier Suarez was in office at the time, right? He didn't stand up to say, "Oh, don't remove the child," right? He stood, I think, pretty neutral. He's still in power to this day.
No,
Like,
but that's still not.
But-
That still doesn't address what I said.
No,
that
it does,
people
Desmond.
that was supportive of him being removed. So you can't even talk about
Okay.
somebody that was neutral.
no,
Tell me someone
being neutral
who
is
was supportive.
supportive.
No,
Your
it's not.
silence is
No,
supporting.
for
Why
us.
don't you name
But
names?
so I'm
Right.
gonna go
Who in the
back.
black
But this is what I'm saying.
community has not
Let
been
me go
voted out
back.
yet?
Let me go back to my original statement. Right. Everything Valencia, everything you said is right. It is right. Right. Only thing I'm saying is that it's not, and I'm not. It's not putting an onus on anyone. But going back to my original thing is that even when I'm advocating for people to get out, there ought to be other people advocating for somewhere for them to land when they get out too as well, right? So Valencia did what she could advocating as far as she could go, but then there's another piece. There is a continuum of care that we as community members can employ. Like you talk about the millionaires and billionaires investing in our communities so we don't get gentrified. Just like Marshawn Lynch invest in Oakland communities, buying a property so that gentrification would slow down. All right, there's
And it
other
ain't
things,
slowed down
but
yet.
but there are other things in that plays a role, right? Because you can go ahead and give me all the money in the world. If I don't know how to manage it, I'm gonna be broke in a couple years.
Yes, that's
I
it.
am, and so
And
all I'm saying is that there's an education piece
I'm not
to this as
disagreeing
well
with you about
to
people with
help
money.
people resist the bad things about gentrification,
Yes.
but then even understand that maybe there are some good things about gentrification because maybe there is at least well, not necessarily with gentrification, but revitalization, right? Right, where people should be getting back
I'm-
into those
Desmond,
communities,
can I-
but they're not.
Who?
But
Us, but the
but
thing is,
can
like
I-
Valencia said, they promised people
Can
they were
I-
going to come back.
can-
When they tore down Sky Project and moved people down south, they promised them that they was going to get
Can
back,
I-
and they lied.
Can I-
Because wait, he talking like he don't got a train to catch. So let's go.
Can I intervene real quick?
Yeah, okay.
So you brought up Marshawn Lynch, right? And I like him. He's a really good brother. I follow his career and everything. And he goes into Oakland and he's been trying to invest because I know that's something that he really cares about, his hometown, right? But you're asking, that's just like I hit the lottery tomorrow, right? I hit the mega ball and I get like $200 million, right? And I go into Liberty City and I'm like, I'm gonna do something for Liberty City. But then you got the Miller family.
What?
The Miller family, yeah. Y'all know who the Miller family is, right? The Miller family, they come in and they do their thing, right? Generational wealth. They probably been owning properties in this thing before I even scratched off my little lottery ticket or whatever. You get what I'm saying? And you expect my impact to be the same. But that's what I'm saying, Desmond. Like,
Wait, when did that come out of my mouth?
wait.
Oh yeah, that never came out of my mouth.
No, but
Valencia said she did all she could with her brother. She
Right.
did whatever little she could, and all I'm saying is that that's good. But how do we get other little things here and there?
We
But-
wouldn't be here if it wasn't a whole bunch
Okay.
of little things.
Yeah.
going on.
Okay, all
and
right.
so this
cool
is
then.
my
You're
thing.
trying to compare it to the
Right.
Millers.
Like you can't I want you to stop. This is what I'm asking you to do, right?
Yeah.
I'm asking you to not compare my Prosecco to rosé. Okay? And it's very
I don't know
clear.
the difference.
And they both taste good. They
Right.
both cost a little change. They both got name recognition, but we are very clear that they are two separate things. Period. Right? And what I am saying is the work that a person like Marshawn Lynch, like even Beyonce does work in Texas and all that stuff, great work, right? But Beyonce is first generational wealthy. First generational wealthy. Jay-Z is first generation, right? So they get into the game brand new. Even if they trying, we're not knocking what they're doing, but this person sitting across from the table, they great-great-grandfather started, right?
So that-
And they were born into this thing, right? They didn't have to go sell drugs first, see incarceration, do all of this stuff first, and then with their money make a sound decision, right? And even though they are making sound decisions, right? Oprah Winfrey is first generational wealthy,
And we'll
right?
tell you in a
And she is trying her hardest. So touche to all of the black and brown people who are first generational wealthy in America, who are trying to make a change in the community that they come from. But it is extremely hard to compare a Jay-Z to a Warren Buffett, my nigga. Oh, sorry. Oh, I almost cussing these people judge.
Wait, I got a
Sorry,
quick question
Pastor.
about this too, because and we got to close out real quick. But so you gain a little money, you get your education, you have an opportunity to live downtown on Biscayne, and now you have this weight on your shoulders as a young black person of should I live on Biscayne or should I live a couple blocks over in Overtown because of my social justice commitments, right? My grandmother did all this. My mother did all this. They put me through college. I have the money to choose this adequate housing. But I think this goes back to the onus and where the conversation has happened of who's the gentrifier is we talk a lot about the white woman with the dog, but not the developer, right? And I'm not saying that she didn't make a decision either. But then in this moment now where I'm a young black person who's aware of these things, or at any age, right? I'm a black person and I'm seeing what's happening in our communities, and I have money to go, because you made a conscious decision to live in community, and people do that. But not everybody wants to do that.
Exactly.
And so what do we
You don't have to. You don't have to.
take
What
off
I'm saying
the,
is, what I'm
weight
saying
on our
is,
shoulders?
don't get it twisted, y'all. Right? I make enough resources. Right? I'm not single anymore, but I am no children, and I make a pretty decent amount of money, and I am college educated. Right? I could have chosen to live anywhere in Miami, Florida. I make enough money to live anywhere I want to live, except for probably Star Island. Like, that's still above my pay grade. But I could live
Not too far away though.
over here off of Biscayne in a high rise. I can, and not sweat about it. Right? I intentionally chose to live in Liberty City. Right? I wanted to save my grandfather's house and all of those things. That was a personal decision. Right? And I have friends. Right? I have friends and comrades who chose the other option. Right?
It was an honorable decision.
And,
It was.
and I don't look down on them for doing that, right? But what I do ask people to do, even if you decide to live there, don't become on the side to support the wrong thing, right? Because sometimes a person will go into a thing like, for example, I'm a queer woman, right? And I'd be like, oh, straightness is so trash, da-da-da-da-da, just because I'm queer. No. I chose love in the way that I chose love because it feels good to me, but it does not make the love that you chose any less,
Auntie
right?
V.
And so what happens sometimes is people of color, right, or women, because women are oppressed in this country too, will make the decision to live off Biscayne or whatever, and you like, oh, Overtown, y'all people in Overtown stupid. Oh, they need to gentrify that, bulldoze that.
So what's the
that's
wrong
the
thing?
problem for me.
But-
like if you're gonna live in your high rise, but still
don't
you can still
look down on
advocate
nobody.
and support the livelihood of the people that are still in the hood. You don't have to live there to support this community to thrive.
So what is the wrong
Uncle
thing?
Monica was
But
about to say
I just need to know the question because she said don't support the wrong thing. So I want to know. Let's be clear. What is the wrong thing
You just
that you
heard
should
me
not
say that.
support?
Oh,
Is
you
that
need
don't-
to.
Is you,
Wait,
if
is
you
it-
done
is-
turn your back on your
Wait,
people,
no. So the wrong.
can't
Wait, hold
even
on.
go too
So the
far
wrong
to the
thing. This one thing. The wrong thing is how you look down on your people.
No, how
or is
you
the wrong thing the
advocate to
gentrification?
destroy them. Because if
Okay.
I go into the voting polls, I'm a taxpaying citizen living in a high rise, and I go into the voting poll to support this taxes
Okay,
that will impact
so
Liberty
the
City.
only
That
the
is
only
me turning
the
my
only
back on
problem
the
the only
community.
problem I have with that is that I heard when Valencia, when you talked earlier and you talked about Liberty Square, right? You said the concept was good. The problem is that they lied. Right? And so even like, for instance, even with this own church, right? The concept, right, is good. And it so happened that they just didn't lie to y'all, right? Maybe they didn't. I don't know. But what I'm saying is this. Was the revitalization of Liberty Square or the idea behind it or that was purported, was that okay, right? And if that was okay, then there is a sort of a kind of revitalization of communities.
Right.
That is
Yes.
acceptable.
I'm gonna-
It is just the lying that I heard
Yeah,
was
in
was
Canada,
problematic.
In Canada,
So don't support the
when we
lying.
had the documentary on tour, Raising Liberty Square, it actually got launched in Canada first, right? Because the United States gave us HELL to get it launched in America first. So we had to go to Canada, right? And in Canada, they had some housing projects. I actually went. We was in Montreal. And we went, and they had some housing projects there that actually went through this process, right? 96% of the people was able to move back in. So Canada got it right. So it can be done correctly, right? 96% of the people that lived in there before they started the revitalization was able to move back in.
Right.
So yes, the idea of it, the people went in there, they agreed to the community benefits agreement. I was in the room. They was like, yes, this makes sense. This makes me feel comfortable. They're going to shift me to one side of the property, and then when the new unit come, I'm going to move over to the other side of the property. Yes, that feels good. They went in there. They had the conversation. They did the thing, right? And yes, it is the lie, but that's the problem in America. They're going to continue to lie. And until...
Wait.
Yeah,
'cause you
and
gotta
it's
go.
easy
So
to
Monica,
say that.
What you want to say, and then we got like 2 questions.
You driving me to drink, Desmond. Y'all got some Jesus wine in here?
But you did. No, that was good. I thank you for that. You needed that explanation.
And that's the problem with gentrification in America because it's always attached to the lie.
To close it out, I think there's there's a lot of nuance, and it's not just an economic problem. It's not just a race problem. It's not just these people are going to do whatever it is they want to do. It doesn't matter how much money you have in your pocket. It doesn't matter how much you advocate for yourself. What's going to happen is going to happen. And I don't know. I don't want to look down on us and like our power, but capitalism is not what's going to save us. And I feel like when we talk about this, I think there was a Fred Hampton quote I just heard. It was just like, they say fight fire with fire. You don't fight fire with fire. You fight fire with water. You don't fight capitalism with black capitalism. So we have to figure out something else. Well, exactly. We need to figure out another way to keep our communities and revitalize them for us.
There we go. There we go.
Hi, everyone. This was an amazing discussion. I really appreciate it. I'm so happy that Naya invited me. Yes, yes, yes. I need to know the name of your film. Yes, yes, yes.
Mountains.
Oh, okay, cool. Awesome. And I agree. We need to revitalize our communities, but keep ourselves within it. And just a quick thing, being not a native Miami person myself, speaking Spanish fluently, being Latina myself, I do want to say that Desmond.
Yes, ma'am.
Desmond, you are correct in the sense that the Cuban community is very tight knit here in Miami. They seem to have an institutional power across the city that's not seen in other Latino communities across the nation, and they do blackball. I'm just gonna say they do tend to blackball.
They will blackball you in a minute.
Those who are against certain things,
And
then
they
with
tend
the
to be
Enyang,
racist.
the child that was taken back to Cuba, that was a thing. Okay, so that's all I
But
have to
even their power is not up to them. Their power is because they happen to come from a communist country and the United States. Exactly.
And their power is being challenged right
I
now.
look less at their
Really
power
quick.
and look more at our potential power because we leave a lot of rocks laying around. I could tell you that now. We leave a lot of rocks laying around.
I just want to say, right, because they have real estate right next door, the Freedom Tower.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole thing was going to be knocked down and built into a condo complex.
Oh, Freedom Tower is straight.
Right? But no, they made it a historic landmark and all of these things, right? But I do not believe that is because they are Cuban. Wait, listen. I'm just finishing my thought, y'all. Let me finish. We're dealing with white Cubans. We're dealing with Cubans who owned land.
Talk that.
Whose land was taken from
Wealthy.
them for a communist government, right? Cubans who were active in capitalism
In
their
Republican.
country. That is why they are refugees. They were the rich, made poor. And so that's
Exactly.
why they will cling to Uncle Sam and say, this is the Ellis Island of the South. This is our Statue of Liberty of the South. This cannot be developed because we agree with what you are doing here and what you would love for Cuba. And so there is an entire political agenda that is running behind.
Well, let me tell you about that political agenda.
But why Cubans on one side of a child being pulled out of a home and on another side have a different response, right? And then when that child was pulled out of the home by the president and the Cubans did not like it, guess what? He said, well, y'all want to go back home?
Okay, so...
Right? And so I just think we have to be careful because in this Cuban example, yes, it's institutional, but it is not institutional because they are Cuban.
And
Let me just give this
either.
hard number real quick.
And I'm not-
Let me give this hard
somebody back
number.
there
Let me
had
give
their
this hard
hand up
number
too.
real quick though. When
got
Rick Scott,
a train.
30 seconds. When Rick Scott first got elected, he won his election by 60,000 votes. Right? He beat, I think it was Alex Sink. That year, over 808,000 registered African Americans and over 912,000 registered Latino Americans did not even bother to vote. That's 1.7 million people of color who didn't even bother to mail in a ballot in an election that was decided by 60,000 votes. 4 years later, after he disparaged black and brown communities, he ran for office again, this time against Charlie Crist. That year, the number of African Americans who was registered to vote that didn't turn out increased over 1.3 million. And the number of registered Latino Americans who was registered that didn't turn out increased to over 1.1 million. So now you have 2.4 million people of color who were registered to vote that didn't bother to even mail in the ballot in an election that was decided by 60,000 votes. If you want to talk about political power, you also have to talk about the power that we leave on the table.
Desmond, I wanna,
that we don't pick up.
Can I lean in?
Those
real
are facts.
Quick? Can I lean in before you speak, sister? 1 second. So, as a person who just got their voting rights back in 2018, shout out to Amendment 4. Amen, you know what I'm saying? Amen. And as a person who votes, and as a person who does advocacy to ensure people have the right to vote, right? I also want us to be careful about us holding communities of color accountable to voting when you know voter suppression is knee-deep in our country, Desmond. You know, because you had to fight for 1.4 million of us to get on the voting rolls. 2, you also have to know, like, I'll go, like, this person was like, oh, yeah, they'll go stand in line for shoes, but they won't stand in line to vote. But the shoes will automatically fix the situation to go cover their feet so they can walk down the street. Yeah. But the voting, the election, sometimes people don't feel the impact on their material conditions.
You got to hold them accountable. You got to hold them accountable.
I'm not
you
disagreeing.
not. I will hold them accountable. That the suppression that we feel today, it ain't nothing compared to what our ancestors felt when they was hung on trees and bitten by dogs and burnt alive. It's a different type of suppression today than it was.
My tree and my noose, right, could look like handcuffs. My noose and my tree could look like public housing. My noose in my tree could look like rape.
That cannot stop you from voting.
But people also, just like you say, I can vote. I can decide to live on Biscayne. And I could decide, because I'm a taxpaying citizen, I still have political power. When I go down there and speak at my commission, I have political power. Just because I don't get up to vote does not mean I don't have political power and I'm not shifting it, right? What I am saying is, and I vote, and I advocate that people should vote. We should vote, right? But also, I don't look down on people who decide, right, to not show up in this election when, in fact, when the last time have our communities actually felt the impact for the better with an election, right? I want to know the numbers and when, right? I've been on this earth 40 years. I was voting at the age of 18 and lost my voting rights. And then when I got back on the voting rolls in 2018, right, I just want to know when. And what I'm saying is we do need to continue to do that stuff, right? I get up to vote every single time because they told my ancestors at one point they couldn't do it. So I vote for every ancestor of mine who could not vote, right? And I get up in that or whatever. And I also want to be very, very clear. We know that we have this fake two-party system, this fake democracy that we have people going in and stuff like that. Like, to be on the news is like we got to get to 277. What the hell is Sorry, y'all. What is 277 when millions of people are voting? No.
Wait.
Desmond,
we
can't
have
bring up the voting thing and then don't want to.
This really feels like I'm in Jersey. Got to catch the NJ Transit, and you will miss your train. Wait, really quick, because we also have lots going on right after this, and we don't want to miss it. Go ahead.
Okay, so I made quite a few bullet points, but I'll try to summarize it. One thing that I wanted to say is I am tired of us calling our communities the hood. I heard you guys call Overtown the hood so many times on that stage. And yes, you. And you know, I'm not originally from the United States. I'm originally from Haiti, and I used to work as a fashion model when I was a teenager, and my agent would always say, don't go to Overtown. And it had such this ugly demure in the way that it was presented that I never looked for Overtown. Do you know that my business is in Overtown, and I've been there for 5 years? And when I went to Overtown, I didn't even know I was in Overtown because the stories that I heard were so dark that I was told if you step foot in Overtown, you're not coming out, okay? So that held me away from Overtown for years. I happened to be invited by a gentleman by the name of Starek Smith, He is the hungry black man on social media. And he was doing an event at one of his buildings. And after the event, he said, Fiola, why don't you walk down the street? Now, had I known I was in Overtown, would I have walked down the street with my laptop, my keys, my purse? And no, but that's the stigma that was sold to me, right? So I left the meeting. I walked 2 blocks, not even 2 blocks, a block and a half, with all my belongings, never felt threatened, never felt like I was in an area where I was going to get mugged, killed, and shot. I stay in my store till 5 o'clock in the morning. I walk to the parking lot. I've been doing that for 5 years in Overtown.
Yeah, and
So I just want to say one thing,
But-
like 5 years, this is going to be 6 years. 6 years ago, they were still talking about Overtown like that.
I just want
Smith
to,
did
but
a movie.
and I just want to clarify one thing too, at least for me. Thank you for this question, and I know we're at time. For me, the hood doesn't have to mean that I'm in danger. It's poverty. It's dirty.
It's actually
the
short
hood
for
is
neighborhood.
actually my
And
safe
another
space.
thing-
The hood is right where I feel, where I go to church. The hood is where I was raised. The hood is where my dad did sell drugs and I felt safe. The hood is where my mom taught in school, right, in Trenton, New Jersey, right? The
And
hood
because social
does-
media,
is
white people call
short
their
for
communities the hood,
the
too.
neighborhood, right? And the
Right.
neighborhood included so much more than white picket fence. The neighborhood meant that Vivi's grandma was going to bring us some rice, and you might have been looking like, well, why is she doing that? You know, is there going to be enough for us? And we sent something back. This was the neighborhood,
No,
right?
but
But I understand what the stigmas and all of these things, but that's not always what's happening in day-to-day lived experience.
Well, I'm
And
gonna
so
share-
but it's semantics. Yes, it's your point that but to get caught up in semantics and tell us we need to stop doing this or that is where we start to police ourselves and not those who are putting things out.
I do understand.
You
that,
really
though.
gotta go,
I know
though.
I do gotta go, but I do understand. I think I do understand what you're saying because words does have power, and then
Right.
what it might mean to me might not mean the same to somebody else, right?
But
And
also,
so,
I wanted to say in
Like
the
the N-word.
almost 6 years that I've been there, crimes that have been committed in Overtown are not from the community.
Of course.
Isn't
It's
that
from
it?
people coming
and that's why we
outside
still gonna call it the hood.
Overtown,
Exactly.
committing the crime
Exactly.
here, and
Absolutely.
then leaving.
Exactly.
But we're
Okay.
gonna let Monica
That's
close us
just
out.
what I have observed.
Close us out.
Sometimes
As
the
True.
hood,
someone that has
saying
just
the
moved
hood,
my business
Viola.
to the community.
sometimes saying the hood protects us from the vultures that
Wait,
come to try to
once-
take it from us. So we have to have our own language to protect ourselves. I don't think the hood is necessarily a bad thing.
There we go.
Anyway,
Yes.
And
thank
we
you,
should
everybody.
be looked down upon because of our culture.
Well,
Because some people that say Creole is not an actual
yes, we gotta go,
language.
but you ain't leaving this. Listen, I know, but you ain't leaving this table without us praying for you.
Okay.
Gracious God, in your many names, we thank you for the opportunity to gather in this kitchen. We pray for our family, this Miami family, this black family, this family of many colors and tones, of many races, of many languages, of many housing zip codes. We pray that you would be with us as we leave from this space. Continue to inspire us that there will be enough. Abundance will be our attitude. Liberation, our motivation. We pray for traveling mercies, especially for Desmond as he gets on this train. In your many names, in your many traditions, we pray. Amen. Ashe. Everyone, there are some great vendors. Yes, there are some great vendors on floor 7. We have a DJ with us. We have a chef who brought a whole fryer up in this place to fry us some food. So we know there's a boycott. But if y'all read, that boycott said small local businesses. So if you've been itching to spend your money, we got the perfect place for you to do it and for you to meet some great folks. We always say here at First Church, whatever you need is in the room. So go and find it. So even talk to our vendors and talk to one another because whatever you need is right here. We love you. Floor 7, everybody.